Hello, all. This is the Happy Career Guru channel, and I am Prasad. Your career is your business, and you are its CEO. These are the words from Andy Grove, who is considered one of the greatest business leaders in the 20th century. He was the CEO of Intel. These words again demonstrate the importance of you in running your career. This is my third video in a series of videos that I am presenting around career management. In the first one, we talked about this model called Buckle Up, which dealt with belief in oneself, understanding one's strengths and aligning it with their job content, looking at the context and reacting how you can actually see what you can control and what you cannot control in the context, understanding your own blockers and what's holding you back, looking at what your personal leadership style is, and finally, looking at how you can engage actively in your career. In the second session, we did talk about the circles of concern, influence, and control. In the circle of concern, you really cannot influence and control. You just can be concerned or prepare for some things. In the circle of influence, you can influence certain items, but you really cannot control the outcome. And in the circle of control is things that you actually can do, like your thoughts and your actions, that will tell you how you can take control of your career. In this particular session, I'm going to talk about one topic of understanding your strengths and aligning it with your job content. Now, as we start talking about understanding your strengths, the first task in this activity is to identify the strengths. What are these strengths that we're talking about? The second task is obviously the understanding, contextualizing what does the activity of identifying strengths means. Once you identify something, how do you really look at it? And finally, after you understand, you start the application, which is aligning those strengths with your job role. All right. Now, if you start talking about the point of identifying and understanding strengths, there are multiple ways of identifying strengths. One of the first ways is this entire activity called assessments. Now, assessments are there. Quite a few assessments are there in the market, and I'm going to talk about them in the next slide. But apart from assessments, you can also understand your strengths on the basis of introspection. I gave an example similar to this in a previous video where I said, if you're working really hard, but you're really feeling energized and you're not feeling tired, something is happening at that moment in time. There is something core to yourself that you're using in that application, which is making you not feel tired and not feel drained. You have to introspect and identify what are the times in your life when you felt like that and what exactly caused it. One of the other ways of identifying strengths is definitely to talk to trusted advisors and friends who know you and who've seen you work and who can give you some pointed advice in terms of whether your assessment of your strengths is appropriate. And finally, you can always take professional help from mentors and coaches, right? And now, once we come to the right side, there are a few things that I want you to put in context of understanding your strengths. One of the first things is when you do these assessments, you may come up with a list of words or adjectives that actually talk about what are your strengths. The point is to either categorize them or bucketize them in a way where they become easy to use. And I'll give you some examples in the next slides. The next thing is to understand when you talk of the application of strengths, you need to talk about it in a certain context. And this is extremely important. Now, I talk about domain expertise in this particular slide here. Why is that relevant to strengths? You apply your strengths to something. What is that something? And let me take a small departure from strengths and talk about a little thing that I see happening in the world right now. For the longest of time, I always considered myself a generalist, which means I used to actually tell people that, you know what, take me and put me anywhere. I have a certain set of skill sets around analytic ability that I can and influence that I can actually use to ensure that I can do any job. But over a period of time, I realized that the world is moving towards specialization, which basically means that the number of jobs for line managers who are general managers who generally know everything but or know a little bit of something but not really detail is not necessarily very true anymore. There is an expectation that people, even at the senior most levels, understand the nuances of the processes their teams manage. In my case, in the last 15 years, by design or by default, I've spent all of my life in sales operations and sales compensation. My understanding of everything from opportunity management to order management to compensation management and the reporting and everything else that goes with the sales experience, I can consider myself a domain expert in this space at this moment after 15 years. So somewhere along the line, domain expertise will start mattering. So start thinking about it. And finally, the most important thing about understanding your strengths is you may be good at doing something, but how do you feel doing it? I can give you an example. Back in the day, I was a project manager and I was managing multiple projects. I was doing pretty well in terms of my price realization or my schedule or how my team was managed, how my activities were on time, and stuff like that. But I have to admit, I was not necessarily enjoying myself pretty dramatically there. So these days, whenever that kind of an opportunity opens up, I find somebody else to do the job. I don't do it because there are people who are more geared and more, I would say, capable of doing it better while generating happiness for themselves while doing task management. And I know so many good project managers who thrive in that kind of a world. Now let's talk about assessments. This is the part that I was talking about earlier. There are quite a few assessments in the market. All of them do different things. Like for instance, there is this Myers-Briggs personality test. You know that this is a very famous one where they talk about whether you're introverted or extroverted, whether you're thinking or you're feeling, and so on and so forth. The point is, these things will describe the personality of you. There are some other assessments that I've heard of called the DISC assessments, which are also supposed to be decent. There are some other assessments I have done in the past which talk about your social style. People talk about enneagrams, which define the kind of person you are or the kind of leader you are. But the one that I have used the most and the longest in my life is this particular assessment called Strengthsfinder. Back in 2007, when I joined Cisco, my manager at that time handed me a book. The book had this particular code somewhere in the middle. I went online and I filled in this form and they gave me my top 5 strengths. And over the period of the next 2 or 3 years, I had the opportunity to take this assessment again, once as an individual contributor and once as a people leader. And there's some small shifts that have happened. But with the assessments that I have had, I figured out where my strengths lie in terms of certain domains. And since then, since 2008 or 9, I have been using this particular theme to find that these are the 3 or 5 strengths that I have. How can I find a job that aligns with these strengths? And every time I go to a job, either I get a job that's aligned with these strengths or I make my job aligned to these strengths one way or another, right? Now I'll talk a little bit more about these themes. What the Strengthsfinder does is that they give you 34 strengths. Generally, they give you only the top 5 for the simple test that, for the, I would say, less expensive test that they have. For the more expensive test, they'll give you all 34. Their belief is that every individual has some shades of all 34 strengths, but the top 5 or the top 10 will have the most significant impact on your career. Which means if you find a job that aligns with the top 10 strengths you have, it's more than likely that you will be successful. Right? Now let me talk a little bit more about these domains that we are looking at here. There are 4 domains that they have here. The first one is what they call executing. Now, back in the day when I had a team in 2009, we had this project that was going on where we had these 400 different users around the globe and we were managing this small project. We are trying to get them away from Excel spreadsheets into one template that they can use and one tool that they can use. At that time, there was a person in my team who was, by compensation grade level, quite junior. But her strengths were extremely aligned on the execution front. So we took a leap of faith and put her as the project manager on that project, and she was extremely successful in delivering to the project because this is where she thrived naturally. One more example around that, 2011 and 12, we had this particular set of stakeholders that we needed to manage, and there's one person in my team whose strengths by the assessment were so strong on the relationship building area and the executing area. She was the face of our team to the customer, and it worked wonders. And she still does similar kind of work right now. And I also have seen this work in my own career, right? Long story short, whether it's relationship building, executing, influencing, or strategic thinking, these 4 buckets at least give you a easy way to put your strengths into these boxes to see. Then it's easier for you to compare some of these categories to the job that you have and how much of your job content allows you to use your core strengths, right? Now, for this assessment, one thing I want to tell you is this. These assessments are directional. This is not gospel. This is not like a rule that somebody who's extremely strong at strategic building cannot, or strategic thinking cannot build relationships. You can build relationships based on your competence, your analytical capabilities. You can build relationship based on how well you execute. So just because you are a strategic thinker doesn't mean you can't build relationships. The only point is the path to your influence, the path to your relationship building may be different. So all of these are very directional. Take them for what they are worth. However, make sure you apply your own judgment on it, which basically means you need to go deep to analyze what's happening. Ask questions. Is this what you're enjoying? Is this how you want to shape your career? And then I'll come to two things, actually two quotes. One from Steve Jobs. If you guys obviously are on YouTube, look for Steve Jobs' speech in Stanford in 2005, where he said that for you to do great work, you need to love what you do. And if you haven't found it, keep looking, don't settle. That's what he said. Can't do any better than what he did there. Don't settle, right? The second thing that I also want to drop in as a quote is by this famous philosopher called Rumi. He said that everybody is born to do a certain body of work. It's just waiting to be found. You have to find yours. And finally, always remember how you feel. Just because you're good at doing something does not mean that you need to do it continuously unless you're happy doing it. All right? With that, I'll let you go. This is the Happy Career Guru. Please find me on LinkedIn, Happy Space Career Space Guru. On LinkedIn or on YouTube, you'll find me. Please subscribe to the channel. I'll be dropping a lot of short videos in the coming days in YouTube, and I will not be promoting them pretty significantly on LinkedIn. That will be too many promotions. I don't want to do that, right? So, and if you have any questions or if you want to start your career transformation journey, please reach me at info@happycareer, as one word, happycareer.guru, GURU. Till next time, folks. Thank you.